Get to work, Ellen. How are you?
Hanging in. I managed to fall today on my way to shul, so I'm all bruised.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Where did you fall?
On the street, on sidewalk?
Yeah, on the sidewalk, and it was, luckily I was walking with Shia, so he helped me get up. But there was this homeless guy, and I was busy looking at him, and I missed whatever
You
it
didn't
was.
look at where your feet were. Yeah, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, it happens. I know.
Thank God, I have plenty of padding, and I'm okay. Tammy, you in Las Vegas?
Tammy, she said.
Tomorrow.
Ah.
I'm all nervous.
All right.
Leaving tomorrow morning early, 7:30.
Ellen, you have to teach us how to
Good.
play mahjong.
What?
Ellen, they want to learn Mahjong. We have a whole nother group. When can you find time for us?
Wait a second, so who wants to learn?
Fran, Susie. Who else was there? Gittel, but Gittel won't come. There's a few of us. A few of you.
If you, I think I need 1 or 2 more classes to finish up your group, and then I'll start another group.
Okay. Fine with me.
Granddaughters too.
Ernie, how are you?
So how would you fit in so many people?
We'll do it. I can do 4 at a time. I can't do
Shavuot, what are you talking about?
Mahjong.
Oh,
The Frankfurt Jewish ladies game.
All the ladies, not just Jewish.
That's
I
true.
know people.
Chinese.
They
Well,
all in Florida, they play all the time Mahjong. I was at my daughter in New Jersey. That's every free minute they had, the girls were coming, they were playing Mahjong. So I had to
Really?
learn. I mean, I had to participate.
oh,
See? By hook or by crook.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
What's it on now?
Let's see. Open up. Second chair.
Yeah, open it. It's too heavy, this thing.
Okay, see this? It's right here.
Susie, why are you laughing?
No, I'm not. I'm happy. No.
Oh, you're right.
You want to learn how to play, Susie?
I said I'm the one who started. I said I want you to teach us. I want you to teach.
Is that the height? I'll be happy to teach you.
I don't even know what it
There's
looks like.
something wrong with my lenses, I can't see.
You'll catch on. I'm not worried.
Pain when I get up.
It's good exercise for the brain.
Right. That's why I think it's good.
Okay. Shavua Tov, everybody.
Tova.
Tov. We are starting Perek Zion, Shmuel Bet. David HaMelech has successfully brought the Aron HaKodesh to Ir David in Yerushalayim. And that sets the tone for the next Perek. Vayiki Hashav HaMelech Beveito. David HaMelech is sitting in his home. V'Hashem iniach lo misaviv mikol oivav. And the pasuk informs us that Hashem has given them rest, Klal Yisrael and David as his king, from all their enemies. Now, why is that important? So says Rashi, Harenis kayem ve'iniach lachem mikol oivechem. There is a nevuah by Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Dvarim, which says, Ve'iniach lachem mikol oivechem. There's going to be a time where Hashem gets rid of all your enemies. Ma kosu v'achrav. What is written after that?
Yeshavtem betach.
V'haya makom asher yivchar. Rashi says. That is going to be the time when the place of my makom will be chosen. Me'ata aleinu livnos beis habechira. So this is based on a Gemara in Sanhedrin Chaf Amid Beis. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer. Shalosh mitzvos nitzav Yisrael b'knisason la'aretz. Klal Yisrael, as its seaboard, had 3 mitzvos when they came into it. La'amid lahem melech, to appoint a king. La'achri zar shel Amalek, to destroy Amalek. V'livnos lahem beis habechira.
Moshe, I told him, I'm sorry, you can't talk now.
And to build the Beis HaMikdash.
Why not?
Ve'eni yodea ize mehen tchila. Now, the question was, which one of these mitzvahs go first? So, Kishu Omer, Kiyad al Kes Ka Milchama Lashem Ba'Amalek. There's a pasuk in Beshalach, which says that the hand of Hashem is on Kes Ka, and there'll be war ba'Amalek. Hevi Omer, Lahamid Lahem Melech Tchila. This is a hint that the first one of these mitzvahs is the appointing of a king, because Ein Kisei Ela Melech. When the reference of a kisei is always to the throne. Shenemar, Vayeshuv Shlomo al Kisei Hashem LaMelech. So kisei, Melech appointing is first. V'adayin eni yodeim livnos lehem beis habechira tchilo la'achri zar shel Amalek tchilo. Well, what's first? Do we build the Beis HaMikdash or do we wipe out Amalek? Kishu omer ve'niach lechem mikol oivechem misaviv v'shavtem betach. Hashem is going to get rid of all your enemies, and like Bernie said, you're going to sit secure. Then comes the pasuk vayam makom asher yivchar Hashem lokechem bo l'shakein shmo sham. Have you omer la'achri zar shel Amalek tchila. So we have our order. First appoint a king, wipe out Amalek, and then build l'chein b'David, who omer vayiki Hashem HaMelech b'veiso v'Hashem einiach lo misaviv. The next pasuk is going to say vayomer HaMelech el Nasan HaNavi re'eina anochi yoshev b'veis harozim, and David HaMelech is going to complain to Nasan HaNavi that he sees the Aron sitting in a tent, and David is sitting in a palace that Hiram HaMelech built for him, and nobody's building a Beis HaMikdash. That's the sort of the segue of these psukim. Pasuk Beis, Vayomer HaMelech el Nasan HaNavi, Re'eino anochi yoshev b'veis harozim. I'm sitting in a house built by cedars of Lebanon. Remember, Hiram HaMelech was from Lebanon, and he brought all of these magnificent cedars. V'aron Elokim yoshev b'toch ha'yiriyah. And the Aron was placed with only curtains above it. So first of all, the Marshal questions, where do we see that David HaMelech wiped out the Amalek? Now remember, he sent Yoav to kill out all the males in a previous pasuk, and he did. But the Maharsha says now that there's peace between the Jewish people and the other nations, there was no direct threat, and Amalek was not fighting. That's enough to be considered ve'iniach lachem mikol oivechem, even though Amalek was not destroyed, because we know that Shaul HaMelech, after he didn't wipe out Agag lived, and we know Haman HaRasha in Purim was already still alive, and says the Maharsha, Lo yichresu ad bias hagoyel b'meir of Yameinu. The Ramban in Sefer Bamidbar says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a tain on Klal Yisrael that they didn't build the Beis HaMikdash prior to this period of time. These are the words of the Ramban. Haya onesh al Yisrael bis acher binyan Beis HaBechira. The fact that during the Shoftim period and all this period, talking about hundreds of years, the Oro Nebuch was schlepping from a tent to Plishtim, back to a tent, and nobody is caring. Nobody's even mentioning, like David HaMelech, at least he's having a feeling, a bad feeling that how come we haven't built a bias for Hashem? So he places some of the blame on the people themselves.
Was David living in Ir David at that time?
Yeah, Ir David is Silwan.
Right, so have they found cedars of Lebanon, the wood in that area archaeologically?
I don't know if they found cedars of Lebanon, but they've found artifacts from that period of time there. Now they couldn't. Now they ask a kasha on the Ramban. Well, how could they build a Beis HaMikdash? You need minui melech, and there was no minui melech during the Shoftim. So that's what the Radak sort of argues with the Ramban there. So I want to read Musar Nevi'im here at a very good piece. Why is it that Binyan Beis HaMikdash comes after Mechias HaMelech? So says the Musar Nevi'im, the Cholzman Sha'Amalek Kayim Ba'olam Ein Od Menucha Yisrael. As long as there's Amalek in the world, there's no Menucha. And listen to this, says the Musar Nevi'im. Cholzman She'ein Menucha Yisrael Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rotze Sheyem Gan Kein Bavuro Makom Shel Menucha. The Makom HaMikdash is a place for the Shechina to rest. And if Klal Yisrael is not at rest, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with Klal Yisrael. And he doesn't want to be a Menucha either. Ki HaBeis HaMikdash Harei Hu Makom Kavua Shel Menucha LaShechina. So there's a very strong limud musari gadol. It says in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, Abba Shol Omer, Zeh Keli Van Veyu. This is my God, and let me beautify him. And the Gemara Darshans, Hevidomelo, you should try to imitate Hashem. Mahu Chanun V'rachum Avatah Chanun V'rachum. Just like he's compassionate, merciful, you should be the same. We should try to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the same way that he is to us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't find fit to rest his Shechina when there's no menucha to Klal Yisrael because Amalek is still in the world. We should feel the same way, that when there are Jewish people in the world that are not b'menucha, we should also not feel b'menucha. We see a riot to that from Masechta Tainis, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. When Klal Yisrael were battling Amalek in the Midbar, they brought Moshe Rabbeinu up to a mountain so that everyone could see him. And when Moshe's hands were up, the Klal Yisrael were winning. And when his hands came down, they were losing. What did they do? Vayikhu even Vayasimu tachtav vayeshav aleha. They brought stones and they put the stones underneath Moshe's hands to enable him to prop his hands up. Freit the Gemara v'chilo hayal ula Moshe kar achas leishav aleha. They couldn't never bring him a pillow. Ela Omar, Moshe said, Kivin she Yisrael shruin b'tzar. Klai Yisrael are fighting a war in Amalek, and they're b'tzar. Afani eya imon b'tzar. I should be in the same matzav. Mikan shav tzadi gamur tzarach l'shtatef matzibur. It's a musa that we have to participate with the sufferings of our people.
Ernie, the Miyam Loes has a very nice commentary. Says that the Torah law states that one may not add to the temple on the Har Habayis in Yerushalayim without concurrence of the king, without the prophet, and without a rabbinical court of 71 elders. So we know that the reason the pasuk says that David went to Nasan HaNavi is that David already wanted it. He was the Rosh Sanhedrin, so he had the approval of the 71 rabbinical elders. He just needed Nasan HaNavi to agree prior to his wanting to start building the Beis HaMikdash.
Very good. So Nasan responds, Vayomer Nasan el HaMelech, Kol asher bilvav chalecha say,
What pasuk is it?
Beis.
Pasuk Gimel, whatever you want to do, go and do, Hashem is with you. Now, the Radak explains that he said this on his own das, not the Ruach HaKodesh. He figured David HaMelech is a good king, and he didn't think that there was anybody else who would have the ability to do so. Shmuel HaNavi, who was greater than him in Nevuah, yet didn't know certain things. Like he didn't know which ones of the sons of Yishai were going to be the Melech. He thought it was going to be Eliav. This is an important issue here because how in the next pasuk Hashem is going to tell David, you are not the one to build. So how could Nasan the Navi tell him now, yes, go and build it?
You can actually see it if you look at the words of the two psukim. The first one calls him Nasan HaNavi, and here it just says Nasan,
Right. So
implying that he did it on his own behest without
that's where
consulting.
the Radak learns.
Yeah.
Right.
What pasuk?
Gimel.
Gimel. So let's look at Pasuk Dalet. Vahi balayla ahu, comes that night. Vahi dvar Hashem el Nasan lemor. And now Hashem is going to reveal what he wants to Nasan HaNavi. Now, what's this thing balayla? So, one pshat is that all Nevi'im, even the Nevi'ei Yisrael, would only get their Nevuah at night, except for Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Rashi, Vahi balayla hu, Amar Rav Chanina bar Papa, Amar LaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Nasa. Ha'adam hazeh shani meshalechacha etzlo mahirhu. You know, David HaMelech is going to come to you now, he's very quick. Shema yiskor po'alev v'nimtzeis mafsido. He's going to already start renting workers. It could cause him to lose money. Maher ve'emer lo lo ata tivnei habayis. Quickly tell him you're not the one who's going to build it. Rav Simon Omer, meaning Rashi doesn't hold like this pshat that Nevuah doesn't come to Nevi'ei Yisrael a day. They do. But this was the reason why this night Hashem appeared to him, because he had to stop David immediately. So rather than wait till tomorrow daytime, he was worried that David that night would already start hiring people. So it's a machlokas whether or not other Nevi'im received Nevuah in the daytime. We know that the Nevi'ei Agoyim, like Bilam, would only get Nevuah at night. The Torah says that when Hashem appeared to Bilam, it only appeared at night. Rav Simon Oimer, Rashi continues, Hadam hazeh shani meshalecha etzlo nadrenu. He's going to take a neder. Asher nishbal Hashem nader lavir Yaakov im avo bo beisi shema yomer ini ochel v'ini shosat shesekach Maybe David HaMelech is going to take a neder. I won't eat or drink until I build it. And it's going to be a hefsed. He's going to have to go get matir neder. So that's the Lila business. Now, Lech, what does he say to him? Lech v'amarta el avdiel David, ko amar Hashem ha'atativ neli bayit l'shivti, sort of in a lashon of bitmiyah, in a lashon of question mark. Are you the one that's going to build my house? In fact, the Yalkut Shimoni points a stira between this pasuk, where it seems to say, if you don't read it b'lashon bitmi, if you don't read it with a question mark, it sounds like he's telling him hatativ neli bayit. But later in Divrei Yomim, it says very clearly lo atativ neli bayit. When in Divrei Yomim, when it recounts all of these stories, it says clearly that Hashem told Nosson Navi that David is not to build it. So the Yalkut Shimoni says, "Hey, chani mekayim shtei mikros halolu." How do we reconcile these two psukim that seem to be in contradiction to each other? Ela lo ata tivneh she'en ata boneh oto, ata tivneh she'bincha boneh oto. You won't build it, but your son will build it. Now, ata higdamta kvodcha lekvodi, she'mishraita atzmecha yoshe bebeis harazim tivat binyan beis hamikdash. Aval Shlomo bincha magdim kvodi lichvodo. David HaMelech first mentioned, I sit in a palace. Varon Elokim Yoshe b'toch ha'yiriyah. But later on, when it talks about Shlomo, it says, Vayivneu, first, Vayivneu sheva shanim v'achar kach es beiso bana Shlomo. Only after the building of the Beis HaMikdash did Shlomo build his own house. Now, it's not a real tain on David, because he wanted to build the Beis HaMikdash. Hiram HaMelech built it for him. It wasn't him that built his own house. And it wasn't a time of peace yet where it was Roy to build the Beis HaMikdash. But the Metzias was that David HaMelech's house was built before the Beis HaMikdash, and it was more appropriate for Shlomo HaMelech to build it because his house got built afterwards. That's one pshat. Now we're going to see that David had blood on his hands. And we're going to see that that's also, we're going to discuss why that might be a problem. Now, the other way to reconcile the psukim, says the Yalkut, is she'ata miyasto. You're going to lay the foundations for the bias. You won't build it, but you're going to have a shaykh, for example, he's the one who's going to find the spot. He's the one that's going to dedicate kesef and zav and the choshes to allow the building to go on.
There is a beautiful shot in the pasuk that Hashem addresses David as Abdi, which is intending to appease David and to indicate that Hashem is very satisfied with his lofty ambitions, although he's not going to allow him to do it. But he is indicating that he is satisfied with his intentions by referring to him as Evet.
Nice diuk.
That was beautiful.
Nice diuk.
Mm-mm. Just want to let him finish.
Now, the Musar Nevi'im points out the following. When the people come to Bilam to try to, the Balak, the messengers from Balak, Bilam tells them, Linu po alayla, vashivoti etchem davar b'asher daber Hashem. Stay at night, and I'm going to tell you what Hashem says. Lama nigla lebilam balayla, mishum shelo hayaroi leruach hakodesh. Bilam was not on the level to get ruach hakodesh. Lefisha kol nevi'ei hagoyim balayla midaberim mahem. V'chein Eliphaz. Eliphaz is a Navi that's referred to in Sefer Iyuv. He says, Mechezionot Laila. And another one of Iyuv's friends, Elihu, talks about Chalom Chazyon Laila. So that's the shot. That's the question. Why was it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to come to Nasan Balayla. So we explained, because that's why you have to, all these reasons. Otherwise, David HaMelech would have had problems. Now, don't ask that Nasan, how could he make a mistake in Nevuah? So really, Be'emet kol dvar vayu nechonim. Because he agreed ulatchil b'achanot shel Beit HaMikdash. David HaMelech was involved in the hachana, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was masking with that. But the final project was given to his son. And now all of this happened, that David started the building. It says in Divrei Yomim, V'chol kochi achinoti labayit, Elokei zahav l'zahav, v'kesef l'kesef.
I see an alternate explanation on the Hata Tivne Li Bayis, referring to the Shechina dwelling inside righteous tzaddikim. They are the chamber in which God resides in this world. The Avos merited this, and this is how Chazal explained the verse in the Vayikra, "V'nasati mishkani b'sochachem." I will put my sanctuary in your midst, referring to in the lave or in the
Like
nefesh.
Bilvavi, the song, Bilvavi Mishkan Evne.
There's something nice here too. Why then, David is asking, why then can't I build it? Hashem responded that he knew that Israel would sin and be deserving of severe punishment. If David were to build the temple, its holiness would be so great because of David's own lofty spiritual level that it could never be destroyed. If so, the Jewish people would have to suffer destruction. Therefore, the temple would be built by someone else, so that the eventual punishment would be the destruction of the temple, but the Jewish people would survive. The point of the Midrash is when God gives a sacred tool with which to serve him, in this case, the temple, they must be worthy of it. If they desecrate it by spurning their responsibility to serve God, either the tool or the desecrator must be removed. If the temple were too holy to be harmed, all God's wrath would be poured out on the people. David's devotion to Israel was so great that he would never permit them to be destroyed. He was happy, therefore, to forego the privilege of building the temple rather than have its indestructibility cause suffering to his people, even if they were to sin. This is from Michtav Eliyahu.
He brings it from the Yalkut Shimoni, what Ellen just said. It says, Ha'ata tivne li bayit li shivti. So Divrei Yomim, it says, Lo tivne bayit li shmi ki damim rabim shafachta artza lefanai. You spilled a lot of blood in front of me. Kivan sheshama David kach nisyari. David was afraid. Omar harein ifsalti milivnos beis hamikdash. What did I make myself puzzled to build the Beis Hamikdash? So Amar Rav Yehuda bar Eloi, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, David, al tira, chayecha hem lefanai katzvi v'cha'ayal. That means the blood that you spilled is like the blood that was spilled when the tzvi and the ayal got spilled. We'll explain that. L'kach nemar shafachta arza, ve'in arza l'tzvi v'ayal, shenemar al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamayim. When the Bnei Yisrael were in the Midbar and they wanted to eat meat, the only meat that was available is the tzvi and the ayal that they could bring without bringing a korban. So David, basically, Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling David, "Ein lecha tzorach b'beis hamikdash b'peidla, ein lecha tzorach b'karbonos." We don't even need karbonos. During the time in the Midbar, the tzvi and the ayal were the only animals that could be brought without offering a korban. Your type of life, we could live without korbanot. David HaMelech is going to die on Shabbos. Armelo, Amut Be'erev Shabbos. I will die Friday if you want. Armelo, Ki tov yom echad tzarecha me'elef. Tov li yom echad shata yoshev osik b'tor me'elef oile sha'atid bin chalak krilu fanai gabe hamizbeach. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells David, one day of you learning Torah is better than the thousands of korbanos that are going to be offered on the Mizbeach. Why? Hatam bazem mipnei shekorbanot nitzrachim la'elu shem nichshalim bechet. Korbanos are need for people who have sinned. Ve'em miskapim al yidei korban. Aval misho sek b'Torah, somebody who's always studying Torah, Torah mishameres also, protects him. Shlo yavo klal yidei chet. You don't even need korbanos. The Yalkut Shimoni continues. Chayecha heim lefanai kekorbanos. Tichsiv ki damim rabim shafachtu lefanai ve'ein lefanai lekorban shenamer v'shachat ez ben abakar lefnei Hashem. Omer lo im kein lama eni boneh also. So David HaMelech says, okay. So you told me I'm not absolved. I mean, I could build the Beis HaMikdash. Omer lo Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is what Ellen said. Im ata boneh oto hu kayam ve'eino charav. If you build it, it can never be destroyed. Omer levarei yofekach. So David says, what's wrong with that? Omer le Kadosh Baruch Hu galu v'tzafru lefanai shematinim lachto. I know through the way Hashem knows everything, there's no past, present, and future for Hashem, that the Bnei Yisrael are going to sin. Vani mafik chamati bo. I am going to take out my anger on the sticks and stones of the Beis HaMikdash. Umachrivim vehein nitzolim. But at least the Klal Yisrael will survive. Like it says in Eicha Beis, Be'ohel bas Shion shafach bo'esh chamaso. Hashem sort of took out his anger on the Ohel bas Sion. Omer lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu chayecha hoil v'chashat levanoso. So you had in mind to build it. Afal pi shlomo bincha boneu lishimcha ani kosvo. I write it like it's your house, like it says, Mizmor Shir Chanukas Habayis LeDavi. So that's directly from the Yalkut Shimoni, what Ellen said, that the fact that one of the reasons why it wasn't built is because otherwise it would have lasted forever, and maybe Klal Yisrael would have been destroyed because Hashem couldn't take his anger out on the Beis HaMikdash. But I think that the pshat about the korbanos is a nice pshat as well. And the Musar Nevi'im says we should even see Tanchumin for our generation as well, and for all the generations. Bezeh she'ad ata od lifnei Beis HaMikdash. Ki efshar she'ein ze chalila mipnei she'en HaKadosh Baruch Hu rotzeh banu shenivnei oto. Maybe not that Hashem doesn't want us to build it. Maybe we don't need korbanos. All the various Jews that were killed, b'kiddush Hashem, all the Jews that have died, sort of killing themselves learning Torah, Yom v'layla. Not because we are inferior, but maybe ki machmas agadlu shebanu. Maybe we've made ourselves like the kedushas of a korbanos, that we are like lebedik korbanos, and maybe that's why the Beis HaMikdash hasn't been built yet. Wow. Okay.
Did Hashem command David at any time to for a milchama?
Yes.
So the reason that he's not building the Beis HaMikdash is basically because Hashem, David was fulfilling Hashem's request.
But so we're gonna deal with that. The Mitzius, though, he was a man who had blood on his hands. And we're going to learn sources that the base of Midrash has to be a place where there's no strife, and you can't use a metal to cut stones. Anything that relates to killing and everything like that can't be associated with Beis Hamikdash, because the base. But on the other hand, tonight we've learned a completely different shot. That it's because of the holiness of David that he didn't get it to build it, because otherwise it never would have been destroyed. So we have to keep both thoughts in mind. Pasuk Vav. Ki lo yashavti b'vayis l'miyom aloti et bnei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim v'ad hayom hazeh. I have not, says Hashem, sat in a house from when Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim until now. Ve'yem etalech ba'ol v'mishkan. I've been wandering in a tent and a mishkan. Rashi says, Mishkan Shiloh lo hayta bo tikra. There was no ceiling. Bayit shel avonim milamatan v'yiriyos milmalon. There was a wall of stone, but it was curtains on top. B'chol asher italachti b'chol bnei Yisrael davar dibarti et achad shiftei Yisrael asher tziviti lirot tamiyat Yisrael lemor lama lo vnitem li bayit arazim. And he held it as a, like we talked about, somewhat of a tluna, a complaint on Klal Yisrael, that nobody until David had this yearning to build the Beis Hamikdash.
It is surprising. You would think that Shmuel perhaps would have suggested it. Like, what was the reason that people didn't suggest it prior to?
So we got a hint tonight. In Shmuel's time, there was no peace. So the criteria of v'niach lachem mikol oivechem had to be satisfied. I think that's why I have to explain Shmuel. Then we can say that Shmuel had a shaychus in this because Shmuel was the one who picked David. So Shmuel sort of is connected to this. Now remember, the Shechina always goes with Klal Yisrael no matter where they are. When Yaakov Avinu is about to go down to Mitzrayim, it says, Anochi eredim cha Mitzrayima va'anochi alcha gamalo. In a sense, the Kadosh Baruch Hu went into Golus Mitzrayim with Yaakov Avinu as well. We know the Nevuah of Yecheskel that we lay on the first day of Shavuos, the famous Nevuah of the Merkava, the chariot. Why all of a sudden? Because as Yecheskel and Klal Yisrael are taken to the Golus after Churban Bayis Rishon, this image of the Merkava goes with them, because the Shechina is on the move. It's got wheels. It's got wings, right? The Shechina goes with Klal Yisrael. It cannot be shoru in a place because these are makom tuma. So Kadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for the time when it can be built in Eretz Yisrael.
It's interesting that even from the time of the Avos, from Avraham Avinu, Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu, tell him he needed to have a bris milah. He sent his malachim to instruct him, and all through history until it came to David HaMelech, none of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu was either in an Oel or in a Mishkan. It's only that so the Me'am always goes on to say that no one ever asked. It's as if God is speaking. No one ever asked me, do I want to have a permanent edifice until you, David HaMelech. And because of that, you're concerned about my honor to a greater extent that it shouldn't be in a temporary dwelling. And therefore you are deserving of a greater reward.
Right. I want to answer Ellen's question in Divrei Yomim, where it talks about the end of David's life when he's commanding his son Shlomo. It says, "Vahi alai dvar Hashem lemor, dam larov shafachta." You spilled lots of blood. Umelchamot gdolot asita. Lo tivne bayit lishmi, ki damim rabim shafachta artza lefanai. So we don't know. The Radak says we don't know whether he was told by Nosson Nabi now this issue. It's only mentioned at the end of his life. But we says the Iye Hayam, Altoy Marsha Haya Eze Taina al David Shlachan el Chamos Elu. Ki Kulam Letzorach Haganat Yisrael Hayu. Like Ellen said, all of the battles that David fought were to protect Klal Yisrael. Elahatam Shalahaya Ra'ui Livnot Habayit. Hayamishum Dmatzinu, like it says in Shmos. Ki Charbecha He Nafta Alea Vatchalalea. You may not cut a stone in the base of Mikdash. That's why they had that special insect, the shamir, that would go on the stones and cut it into pieces. They didn't have metal. And therefore, Mitzias is David, lo shaykh shataya bonesh beis hamikdash. Ki dami rabim shafachta. Even though your milchamos was bedin. Some give pshat, the Radakov, it says, you cannot go to battle and not kill innocent life. We also see he sent Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, to the front lines. And remember, the Shaul HaMelech killed out the city of Nov Ira Kohanim. And David really was the reason behind that. And since there was Shrichas Domim somehow connected to him, you can't build a base of Mikdash, which is l'shalom u'l'chapar avon and for tefillah. So it's a metzias. You know, even though David did a good thing, he's not the right person to build it based on these pshat. Pasuk Zayin. No, excuse me, Pasuk Ches.
Yes.
Again, he refers to him as Avdi. Ko amar Hashem tzvakos, ani lekachticha min hanaveh. I took you from being a shepherd. Me'achar atzon liot nagid al ami al Yisrael. We see that it's not uncommon for leaders in Klal Yisrael to be ro'im, like Moshe Rabbeinu himself. There's certain aspects in terms of how the shepherd deals with his flock that's important for Klal Yisrael as well. V'yem chan, I will be with you. B'chol asher alachta, v'achrita et kol oivecha mipanecha. Hashem in these psukim is giving David chizuk. Correct. You're not going to build the base of Mikdash, but take heart. I'm going to be with you. You're going to be matzliach. You're going to wipe out all your enemies. And here comes. V'asita lecha shem gadol. Your name will be great. Kishem agdoilim asher ba'aretz. Rashi, zeu she'omrim mogen David. So we say in Shmona Esrei, we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, and
Torah.
when we make a haftorah, when we make a bracha on the haftorah, we say Magen David. So in a sense, it elevates one of the brachas of the haftorah is Magen David. We elevate in Psachim Kuf Yud Zayin, Tani Rav Yosef Zesha Omri Magen David. Based on this pasuk that I'm going to make for you a great name, Keshem Shemazkirin Bitfila Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Yaakov Shayu Agdolim Shalanu Kenanu Mazkirim B'Birchas Haftorah Magen David Uma She'omri Abracha Zos B'Haftorah V'lo Bitfila. The Maharsha explains the makor is come divrei Nosson Hanavi. Lefichach taknu legabe kriyas neviim b'Haftorah. It's we use Magen David by the Haftorah because here it was revealed by Nosson Hanavi to David in Sefer Nevi'im.
Just to add to that, interestingly enough, the Meyam always has a statement about the Talmud Yerushalmi, says the bracha in Shemona Esrei v'Yerushalayim Ircha. There was one opinion that said you should end the bracha Baruch Atah Hashem Magen David Ubonei Yerushalayim.
Right.
Beautiful.
Right. There's also in the Sfardim, they say v'chisei David mehera l'tochat achin uvnei otah b'krov yemei bina lolo and Baruch Atah Hashem Bonei Yerushalayim. They'd also throw David's name in there.
Is giving the name, calling David Abdi, David, is that like Moshe was called an Eved? Is that an unusual term or is it a common term?
It's not a common term. In fact, the Chazal go to town when Moshe is called Eved Hashem. So it's a great praise that we don't see by other people. Like,
It does state here, I'm just curious, it says that the title Eved was bestowed on only 10 people throughout the Tanakh. I wonder if we could enumerate that.
Of the Yaakov, right?
yeah, Abdi Yaakov,
Yaakov,
and then
Mo-
Moshe.
Moshe,
Right.
David.
Moshe, yeah.
What about the other Avot? Eved Abraham, I guess probably Abraham, I would imagine.
I don't know. It's a good, you've given us some homework. Okay, so I think that brings us,
Count so far, Yaakov, Moshe, David,
we'll get the others. It's a good, we'll have some homework.
But interesting, there's another comparison when you talk about a shepherd, the elevation, David came from being a simple shepherd to Melech Yisrael. The same thing with Yosef. Yosef was the son left behind to be the shepherd while the other brothers were out, right? And what
Moshe.
ultimately happened, he became Malchus also, right? He became the viceroy in Mitzrayim.
Right,
well, Moshe.
and of
It's
course,
called
Moshe. That's
Moshe.
the-
He was in Goshen, he was a shepherd.
But he became a shepherd in his wanderings after he left Mitzrayim.
Right.
Okay, wonderful, everybody. Very nice insights tonight. It's a very rich perek, and we will continue Mirz Hashem next week.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Shavuot.
Shabbat tov.
Shavua tov.
But,